Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today, we're diving deep into the life of George Washington, one of history's most iconic figures. But we're not talking about the stoic face on the dollar bill. We're going to uncover the real man behind the legend. Based on Ron Chernow's biography, Washington, A Life. Prepare to be surprised, because this deep dive reveals Washington's hidden depths, his fiery temper, surprising sensitivity, and the calculated aloofness he used to command respect, and even a touch of fear.
It's fascinating how his family history really laid the groundwork for his journey. We often think of him as this almost preordained leader, but his rise to prominence is even more remarkable when you consider his family's background.
Yeah, his great-grandfather, John Washington, carved a path through military achievement and land acquisition, even earning a pretty intimidating nickname from Native Americans, Town Devourer.
Wow, that moniker definitely speaks to the ambition and ruthlessness that ran in the family. This drive continued with Augustine Washington, George's father, who moved the family to Ferry Farm. It was during those formative years that George's older half-brother Lawrence arrived on the scene.
Lawrence seems like he was almost a mythical figure to young George. This worldly and sophisticated older brother who'd been off on adventures. It was Lawrence's experiences, especially his military campaigns, that ignited George's interest in a more adventurous life, right?
Absolutely. Think about it without Lawrence's influence. Who knows what path George Washington might have taken? Instead, we see that early spark leading him to one of his first forays into leadership. A mission that sounds like something straight out of an action movie, delivering a message to the French in the Ohio Valley in the dead of winter.
Talk about a trial by fire, harsh winter conditions, treacherous terrain encounters with Native American tribes. It was a true test of his courage and determination.
And it revealed a lot about the future general and president we all know. This journey showcased his resilience, his ability to think on his feet under pressure, and that unwavering willingness to endure hardship for a cause he believed in. These qualities would become hallmarks of his leadership during the Revolution.
Speaking of the Revolution, we all know Washington had this fiery temper, but he learned to control it and channel it into something incredibly powerful. You could even argue that journey to the Ohio Valley was where we see him start to master that inner fire, transforming it into determination and resilience.
That's a fascinating insight. It wasn't just about controlling his temper. It was about harnessing it, turning that raw energy into the kind of resolve that would be needed to lead a revolution.
And lead he did, eventually becoming commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. But it was far from smooth sailing. Washington faced monumental challenges, from managing an often undisciplined and poorly equipped army, to navigating the complex political landscape. He had to deal with Congress, foreign allies, his own officers, all while trying to keep the revolutionary spirit alive.
It's incredible how his leadership style evolved through these trials. He had this natural fiery temper, as we've discussed, but he learned to balance it with a calculated aloofness to command respect and maintain order. Despite setbacks and defeats, he never lost sight of the ultimate goal, independence for the fledgling nation. And he never gave up on his men, even when facing mutiny, lack of supplies, and constant threats from the British.
It's remarkable how he rallied his troops, kept morale up, and somehow managed to hold the army together through sheer force of will and a deep personal commitment to the cause.
He understood that image and perception played a crucial role in leadership.
You're right, it wasn't just about military tactics. He cultivated a sense of awe, even fear, using his imposing physique and reserved demeanor to project authority.
Exactly. Think back to those early descriptions. His unseen power, the way people sensed his moods without him even having to say a word. It's almost like he had an innate understanding of how to command a room.
He knew how to use silence, how to control his emotions, and how to present a united front even when internally he might have been wrestling with doubts. This mastery of image proved invaluable not only on the battlefield, but also in the political arena.
Speaking of politics, after the war, Washington could have easily retired to Mount Vernon and enjoyed a peaceful life as a planter. But fate, as they say, had other plans.
Yeah, his retirement was short-lived. He was called upon once again to serve his country, this time in the creation of a new government, a task that would demand every ounce of his leadership and political acumen.
His role in the Constitutional Convention was pivotal. He wasn't the most vocal delegate, but his presence alone lent legitimacy and gravitas to the proceedings.
It's amazing to think about that transition from leading an army to essentially building a country from the ground up. And just like during the war, he faced his fair share of challenges in this new role.
The creation of the Constitution was a contentious process. With fierce debates and deep divisions among the delegates, Washington, ever the pragmatist, worked to bridge those divides and forge a path toward a stronger, more unified nation.
So we see this recurring theme of Washington confronting seemingly insurmountable challenges, whether it's battling the British or navigating the complexities of creating a new government, and yet he always rises to the occasion, displaying resilience, strategic thinking, and an unwavering dedication to his country.
It's a testament to his character and his belief in the American experiment. And as we'll see, his leadership would be tested yet again as he stepped into the role of the first president of the United States. Talk about pressure. No rulebook, no precedents to follow, just the weight of an entire nation's expectations on his shoulders.
His journey to New York City for the inauguration was like a triumphal procession. With crowds cheering him every step of the way, people saw him as a symbol of unity, stability, and hope for the future.
And he knew that the world was watching. Every decision he made, every action he took would set a precedent for the presidents to come.
It's incredible to think about the challenges he faced during his presidency. He had to define the office itself, figure out how to navigate the complex relationship between the executive and legislative branches, and establish a functioning government from scratch.
Not to mention the ever-present challenge of partisan politics, which were already rearing their ugly heads even in those early days. The rivalry between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Two giants of American political thought played out right in his cabinet.
It must have been incredibly difficult trying to mediate between those two strong personalities. Each had their own vision for the nation, and their clashes could be quite dramatic.
Washington, despite his own personal leanings, recognized the importance of hearing different viewpoints and finding common ground. He understood that unity was fragile, and he worked tirelessly to maintain it.
And then there was the Society of the Cincinnati, this exclusive club of Revolutionary War officers. Some saw it as a potential threat to democracy. An elite group grabbing power. Washington had to navigate that carefully, showing he was for the people, not just the privileged few.
He also faced challenges on the international front. The French Revolution, which initially sparked hope for liberty and democracy, quickly descended into chaos and violence, putting Washington in a very difficult position.
America had a treaty with France, and many Americans, including Thomas Jefferson, were sympathetic to the revolutionaries. But Washington, ever the pragmatist, knew that getting entangled in another European war would be disastrous for the fledgling nation.
His decision to issue a proclamation of neutrality, declaring America's intention to stay out of the conflict, was a controversial one, but ultimately it proved to be the right call. It also showed his willingness to put America's interests first, even if it meant alienating allies or facing criticism at home.
And then there were domestic crises to contend with. The Whiskey Rebellion, a tax revolt in western Pennsylvania, tested the government's ability to enforce federal law and maintain order. This wasn't just a bunch of disgruntled farmers complaining about taxes. It was a direct challenge to the authority of the new government.
The Whiskey Rebellion really challenged the very core of this new government. Imagine the pressure on Washington to act decisively, but also avoid bloodshed. He chose a show of force, but also offered amnesty. It's a fascinating study in balancing authority with mercy.
Exactly. Washington responded with decisive action, leading a militia force to suppress the rebellion and demonstrating that the government would not tolerate lawlessness or threats to its authority.
Throughout all of this, Washington remained acutely aware of the precedents he was setting. He knew that his actions would shape the presidency for generations to come. He established a cabinet system, insisted on being addressed as Mr. President, and most importantly, chose to step down after 2 terms, even though he could have easily remained in power for life.
That decision to step down is arguably one of his most significant contributions to American democracy. By voluntarily relinquishing power, he solidified the principle of peaceful transfer of power and set a standard for presidential term limits that continues to this day. It was a powerful message. The president was not a king, but a servant of the people entrusted with power for a limited time.
And in his farewell address, Washington offered words of wisdom and caution that resonate even today. He warned against the dangers of partisan divisions, entangling foreign alliances, and accumulating national debt. It was a message of unity, prudence, and a deep concern for the future of the republic.
But even in retirement, Washington couldn't fully escape the pull of public service. As tensions with France escalated, he was called upon once more to lead the army, this time as commander-in-chief of a provisional army raised to defend the nation.
So he walked away from power, a move that echoes through history. But even in retirement, that burden of leadership never truly loved him. He was grappling with the legacy of slavery, a moral dilemma that weighed heavily on him.
It's a complex issue, right? Slavery. It's a dark stain on American history. And Washington, as a slave owner himself, was undeniably part of that system.
It's crucial to remember the historical context. Slavery was deeply entrenched in the society Washington lived in. But even within that context, his views evolved over time. His correspondence reveals a growing moral dilemma. He recognized the inherent injustice of slavery, even while struggling with the economic and social implications of abolishing it.
So he's wrestling with this huge moral question while also trying to run a country. That's got to weigh on a person. Makes you wonder, why do you think it took him so long to act on his convictions?
That's a question historians continue to debate. Some argue that he was a pragmatist, prioritizing the stability of the nation over immediate moral action. Others suggest that he may have feared the social and economic upheaval that emancipation could bring. Regardless, his actions ultimately spoke louder than words when he chose to free his slaves in his will.
The big move, right? It was a powerful example that contributed to the growing movement for abolition. It also reminds us that even the most revered figures in history were complex individuals, shaped by their times but also capable of moral growth and change.
And even as he grappled with these weighty issues, Washington also found solace in the simple pleasures of life at Mount Vernon. He was passionate about agriculture, constantly experimenting with new crops and farming techniques.
Washington wasn't just a general and president, he was obsessed with agriculture. Imagine him, after leading a nation, getting his hands dirty back at Mount Vernon, always striving to learn and improve. He devoured books on farming, experimented with crops, even wrote about crop rotation.
He was always trying to improve his plantation, to make it a model of efficiency and innovation. He corresponded extensively with experts in England, seeking advice on everything from crop rotation to livestock breeding.
And while he longed for peace and tranquility, he remained deeply engaged in the affairs of the nation, offering his counsel to presidents and statesmen.
His death in December 1799 was mourned throughout the nation and the world. He was eulogized as the father of his country, a title that has endured to this day.
So after diving deep into all of this, what can we learn from the life of George Washington?
Well, I think his story offers valuable lessons about leadership character and the enduring power of ideals. Washington was not a perfect man, but he was a man of principle, courage, and unwavering dedication to the cause of liberty and self-government. He faced immense challenges, made tough choices, and ultimately left behind a legacy that continues to inspire generations of Americans.
His story is a reminder that leadership often means making difficult choices, balancing personal convictions with the needs of the nation. And sometimes it's about knowing when to step back and trust the future to those who come after you.
If you want to delve deeper into this fascinating and complex life, we highly encourage you to read Ron Chernow's biography, Washington, A Life. It's a rich and rewarding read that offers a fresh perspective on the man who helped shape the destiny of a nation.
You can find a link to purchase the book in the episode description. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Moments for more deep dives into captivating biographies and historical accounts. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the life of George Washington. We hope you've gained new insights and a deeper appreciation for the man behind the legend.